Your Majesties, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 12th edition of the European Development Days, an initiative driven by the European Commission. Bienvenue, salamu alaikum, and as we say in my home country, Kenya, karibuni. My name is Zain Verji. Let me start by asking all of you just what is sustainable development? For me, it begins with the holistic views encapsulated by the 17 Sustainable Development Goals adopted by the UN in 2015. Growing up in Kenya, I saw firsthand how African women gather food and fuel, feed families, struggle to better their lives. They are entrepreneurial. They are resilient. Technology has helped change their lives and those of their families. When I go back home to Kenya today, I see women farming with apps, selling with Google and mobile money, coding, driving creativity, and telling their stories to the whole world. All they needed was an opportunity. They are talented and need only opportunity to change their lives. And women can no longer be ignored. Our voices are all part of a community that wants to push boundaries, that wants to drive change. There are more than 8,000 of us here today from 140 countries, heads of state to practitioners, policymakers to volunteers. For 2 days, we are going to explore, share, debate, and brainstorm on how women can contribute to making change effectively. I'd like to start by inviting the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, to open this day with a few words.
Your Majesties, Mr. President of the African Union, Messieurs les Présidents, Premier Ministre, Ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs les députés.
Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Commission and thank you for having come here to the European Development Days. I've often had the opportunity to tell you individually, but I've always believed that Europe is not just an invention for itself. It's not just something that finds its own satisfaction in all fields. No, we Europeans have to stop gazing at our neighbours. We've got to think that we've got to stop thinking and realize that if things go well in Europe, things are going well. The situation in the world is not good. It's not as satisfactory. So we really have to make an effort so that Europe will play its role on the international scene, even if we haven't got an answer to everything. As Europeans, have to stop trying to teach everyone else lessons. Who do we think we are in doing this to everyone? No, we've got to set up new actions, especially with Africa, on this fact that we have to have partnerships as equals. And this is part of the virtues of a multilateral system, and it's an essential role of the United Nations. And I'd like to welcome the Vice Secretary General of the United Nations, who's here today. Now, if we look at the things that the contexts are changing, the rules have been for the world order. All of us here have to be mobilized in order to defend multilateralism. In this globalized world, an interdependent world, multilateralism can guarantee a peaceful coexistence between our peoples. So we have to join forces with everyone else to ensure that peace, liberty, and prosperity are shared throughout the world, much more than it is now. And Europe, who's already doing a lot, we say, because at the world level, we send most of the AIDS, world AIDS, more than 76 million euros this year in foreign aids. So, but we have to try to attract private investment, essential when there's a great need. And that is why I've suggested an external investment plan which will allow us to mobilize up to 44 billion euros. The European Union has said that they will match this effort. And as there are many European ministers present, we'd like to ask them to confirm today what they haven't done in the past. To do better implies greater solidarity, especially with Africa. This is a younger continent. It's promising. It's got a lot of future. That's why we've set up a fund for Africa that opens a lot of job possibilities in Africa itself. And last week, we, the Commission, adopted a package of new products for 467 million euros. If we look to the future, we have to remain faithful and loyal to our principles and to our values, even if the budget for the period 2021 and 2027 will probably be the most difficult one, more than ever, but we will have to compensate for the loss of the UK, 84 million euros less throughout the 7 years of this budget. But even though this may be true, our external actions must not pay for this, and that's why I've decided to increase by 26% our efforts for external aid to reach 123 billion euros. Africa, one of the more fragile partners, are one of our priorities, and we want to stress the great challenges for the future: security, climate changes, human rights, and managing migration. And we must not forget that what is at the heart of our actions is, first of all, the fate or the destiny of millions of people who are looking with hope to Europe. And I'm thinking of young girls and women who are still victims of the worst type of inequality and injustice. We must do everything we can to combat violence against women and help and promote their emancipation, because this means that we are ensuring the dignity of each human being. And what a better world for women is a better world for everyone. I'll give you a simple example. It's not the greatest one, but it's very important. Improving women's equality in the world labor from 12 to $28 billion between now and 2025 is what we are investing for this. This is a greater problem for developing countries and for the future of humanity. And this is at the heart of these days for European Development Days. And this is what the European Commission will be working a lot, mainly, in cooperation with the United Nations. All together we can do wonderful things, and all together we will do wonderful things. Thank you.
Thank you, President Juncker, for your great commitment and your support. I'd now like to introduce Her Majesty, the Queen of the Belgians, to share her thoughts.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this year's European Development Days is very pertinent, I think. When it comes to sustainable development, women and girls do indeed require special attention. Very often, they need protection, but above all, they are an essential force for the implementation of Agenda 2030. As an advocate for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, I consider health and education to be the cornerstones of development. In this regard, I advocate for inclusive development that leaves no one behind and that pays particular attention to the most vulnerable people, to women, to young girls, to children, and to those with a disability.
Today, I would like to talk to you about mental health and the particular situation of women concerning mental health. We see that there is more awareness of the impact of mental health issues, and this is a very encouraging sign. We are also very pleased to see that there are efforts being made to try and break down the taboo around mental problems. Very recently, at a meeting being held with the highest leaders at the UN, mental health was described as one of the most neglected areas of public health or global health, while it is actually a key part of Agenda 2030 and key in our completion of Agenda 2030. We should also note the increased attention that the WHO is paying to mental health, looking in particular at the risks of mental issues which affect women and children. According to the WHO, 10% of illnesses are linked to mental health issues, neurological issues, or linked to some addiction. This is a phenomenon which can be seen across the world. More than 650 million people are seen as having mental health issues, be it depression, be it burnout, or be it other types of psychological problems, without, of course, leaving to one side the psychological issues that are linked to armed conflict and which can continue long after the end of the war itself. Mental health is a precondition for development. It is key for global well-being, and it is essential if we want to ensure that we're able to achieve a number of our development goals, and in particular, if we want to make sure that we can fight against poverty. We must make sure we have access to high-quality education to bring down inequalities. We want to ensure decent work for all, and we want to achieve economic growth. Our concerns have not disappeared. Many of these issues concerning the well-being of individuals are still existing today. We must continue and indeed step up the fight for equality of opportunity between men and women, and we must also continue our fight to protect the vulnerable in society. In Ghana, for example, I was able to witness an increasing awareness of the difficulties created by early marriages, even and this awareness is being felt even in the most traditional sectors of society. This was extremely encouraging. I think now we really must move to deal with the sorry situation of abducted school children, and we must also deal with the issue of stigmatized children who are who are born out of rape. But there are solutions and there is hope. We can see that there is a greater awareness of the role that African women can play in mediation as a preventative measure or as a tool for peaceful resolution of conflict. This shows that they're being recognized as the peace bringers in their communities and in their regions. At a recent UN conference organized by Belgium in New York, I was able to see the positive impact that this was having in the field. witness of Nadia Murad, who was abducted and sold to Daesh as a sex slave at 21 years of age, who I had the luck of meeting in Brussels recently. We were able to learn of her traumatism and her suffering, and she showed that through confidence in the future, through her energy, through her resilience and her confidence in a better life, she was able to overcome these difficulties. She has now become a human rights activist and is a hero for justice and dignity.
And I quote, "Let hope unite us. Let humanity unite us. For hope and humanity is the voice we can give our children. It is what our children deserve." Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the United Nations have a holistic vision based on integration, but they've also made a very good selection of the instruments, the tools, the arguments and the policies that will enable us to come closer to the targets and the goals that were set for the Agenda 2030. The Sustainable Development Goals do not only open new perspectives for us, but they also involve concrete and clear commitments and urgent commitments. The European Development Days this year is giving a clear echo to these commitments. And it's also enhancing them, expanding them by putting women and young people at the very heart of our debates, at the very heart of our hopes. And thus, we can all, every citizen, every volunteer, every leader, we can all share a personal and collective commitment to ensure that harmonious and sustainable development become a reality for all. Thank you.
Merci. Thank you, Your Majesty, for being such a strong champion for inclusivity and development and speaking so powerfully and passionately about the important topic of mental health. I'd like to invite now Her Majesty, the Queen of Spain, to say a few words.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président de la Commission.
Good morning, President of the Commission, Queen Mathilde, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank the European Commission for having invited me to participate in these wonderful European Days dedicated to development.
I was walking around the most impoverished neighborhood in the Americas, Cité Soleil in Haiti, where I went to raise awareness and support the Spanish and the European cooperation. The same day, a woman was being appointed as president of the New York Stock Exchange. At the very same hour, when the biggest stock market in the world was being led for the first time in its history by a woman, Stacey Cunningham, by the way, another woman, Nadine, 17 years old, was telling me in her best French that her 3-year-old son, just imagine, 17, 3 years, didn't have anything to eat. She also told me that she could not read nor write, and also that she nearly died giving birth. You all probably know about hundreds, perhaps thousands of cases that show similar disparities all around the world. You all know very well that these things happen every day. You also know that when referring to human development, there is more to it than just pure economic growth. Europa se construyó sobre valores como la libertad.
We look at values such as freedom and solidarity, and this is one of the reasons why we're here.
Of ODA, because Europe plays an essential role in the social policies that lead the way to cooperation. As the UN and European Commission affirm, a cross-cutting equality approach is the backbone in the development of the capacities that every human being deserves: education opportunities, access to health services, and quality nutrition, and to move freely and safely. Fighting the combination of poverty and gender inequality demands a balance between both the public and private spheres in our life, between the political and economic, and then family and beliefs. Just two more ideas I would like to share with you as food for thought. Integral health, in the words of WHO, precedes development. Is in the fact the very source of development. The amount of figures in health development and women is endless. As an example, I just picked this from the recent WHO reports. El 40% de la población
40% of the population of the world has no access to electricity or any access to clean fuels. This means 4 million deaths a year, mainly women and children.
Cooperation, a joint endeavor and committed action by all social, economic, and political actors is certainly the most appropriate and valuable way to reach the objectives set by the UN Gender Action Plan in line with the SDGs, and ultimately a good way to provide every human being with the means to find the best possible conditions for her or his full development, and of course, for happiness. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Muchísimas gracias. Que vayan bien estos 2 días. Gracias.
Thank you, Your Majesty, for your ideas and your words on the quality of approach when it comes to education and health in particular. I'd now like to invite His Excellency Paul Kagame, the President of Rwanda, to share some of his thoughts.
Majesties, Excellency, President of the European Union Commission, dear brothers, heads of state from our continent, leaders, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to join you once again for European Development Days, and I thank President Juncker for the kind invitation. Women and girls constitute half of humanity, and they are equal in ability in every way. Guaranteeing their equal rights is therefore common sense. Consensus on this point was reached more than a generation ago. Ever since, gender equality has been at the forefront of development, policy, and practice. Good results have been achieved both in rich countries and poor ones. Unfortunately, we are a long way from treating women with equality and respect. As a result, outcomes for women and girls continue to lag behind. Incidents from across the world continue to show that this problem cuts across regions and affects us all. Let me give 3 examples. In the workplace or as public leaders, men expect to be judged on the basis of their character and ability alone. Otherwise, they are free to be themselves. That is how it should be. But this freedom is often denied to women. It is not enough for a woman to be as good or better than male counterparts. She must also look a certain way and even be careful about her tone of voice. Failure to conform comes with a cost in terms of salary and career advancement, a penalty that men do not have to worry about. Second, women perform countless extra hours of unpaid labor every day, organizing social gatherings, taking care of sick relatives, maintaining the household, raising children. It is often said that working women have 2 full-time jobs, and this is not far from the truth. These duties affect women's careers and serve as an implicit justification for promoting men faster. According to a recent World Bank study, I was told by one of the leaders in the World Bank, countries are losing $160 trillion in wealth because of the lifetime earnings gap between women and men. Third, the culture of tolerating sexual harassment is a heavy tax on women's rights, as we have been hearing with increasing frequency. Women have been expected to keep quiet about these negative experiences. It is a good thing that it is beginning to be talked about more openly. For too long, society has created a psychology that women are inferior and can only rise at the mercy of men. This is a norm that can no longer be tolerated, not only with regard to unwanted advances, but indeed in all aspects of the struggle of equality. We must really believe in it, all of us, and the most important work is at the level of mindsets. That starts with learning to see the extra hurdles that women must clear every day, whether in terms of unfair expectations, unpaid work, and violations of personal dignity. He for she, or she's we, these should not be mere hashtags, but expressions of our determination to make change really happen. Rights and outcomes are only equal when treatment is equal. Compensating women for where they have been disadvantaged is not enough. We have to truly level the playing field and make public pledges that raise standards and expectations going forward. It is up to leaders at every level to ensure that there is accountability for changing harmful societal norms. The task cannot just be left to individuals to sort out among themselves. In Rwanda, to give one example from my country, we have instituted an insurance scheme that allows women to continue receiving their full salary during 12 weeks of maternity leave. We have no problem of equal pay. Our approach all along has been to focus on the benefits that gender equality brings to society. As a result, no one feels they have lost something, and the gains are sustainable. Development policy has an important role to play, and the European Union is a good partner because of the value placed on gender equality internally and in its international engagements. That is evident in the agenda for this year's European Development Days. This complements the focus on gender equality at the heart of Agenda 2063, the African Union's blueprint for our continent's future. It is also fitting that two of Africa's liberation heroes will be honored here this week, Mama Albertina Sisulu and Nelson Mandela, on the occasion of their centenary. Their example remains an inspiration to Africa and the entire world. I would like to close by wishing you a very productive set of interactions in the days ahead. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, President Kagame, for always championing women and girls' rights in Rwanda and in Africa, and as chair now of the African Union, also making it a priority high up on the agenda. Thank you. I'd like to welcome Marie-Louise Colero-Preca, the President of Malta, to share her views.
President Juncker, Your Majesties, Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear friends. I would like to thank President Juncker and the Commission for inviting me to join you at the opening ceremony of the 12th edition of the European Development Days. I believe that to achieve the equal, equitable, and full participation of women within the countries of the European Union, we must unite our efforts to promote effective strategies for the socio-economic inclusion of all our women and girls. We must admit that gender inequality and the barriers that women face to achieve quality economic empowerment remains one of the biggest challenges to the successful implementation of our global commitment for inclusive growth. The international community has endorsed this objective in the United Nations Agenda 2030 and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. SDG 5 targets the need for gender equality and for the empowerment of women and girls as part of our united journey towards equality, equity, and justice for all. Gender parity does not only promote peaceful and just societies, but as research shows, it contributes substantially to global economic growth. Women's economic empowerment involves access to adequate resources, to education, and to capacity building. It must also involve the recognition of the care economy within which women are highly represented. We must do more to create opportunities for women to be participants in decision-making across the social and economic spheres of our countries. Furthermore, we all know that the social and economic empowerment of women does not end with women themselves, but it leads to the enrichment of our families, our communities, and our societies as a whole. However, dear friends, there is a big difference between knowing that a thing is right and doing the right thing. We must admit that we are not moving fast enough to realistically achieve the empowerment of women and girls across the world. We are still a long way off from reaching a fully gender-equal society in all the countries of the European Union. The latest European Institute for Gender Equality Index states that in some areas, the gaps or inequalities are even bigger than they were 10 years ago. According to the latest data from Eurostat, full-time working women in the European Union would need an average rise of 19% of their hourly wage to match male wages. Although reports from Eurostat tell us that women are successful in gaining qualifications, their subsequent careers are more interrupted, less well paid, and often result in lower pensions. Even the latest Global Gender Gap report, commissioned by the World Economic Forum for 2017, states that gender parity is shifting into reverse for the first time since the World Economic Forum started measuring it. Within the European Union, specifically, the European Institute for Gender Equality Index states that progress in the economic participation of women has slipped backwards in 12 countries. I would like to encourage us all, during these European Development Days, to take up more effective strategies for the increased inclusion of women in the socio-economic sectors of our Union and beyond. An effective strategy from my own country is the implementation of access to free childcare centres. This has contributed to a 6% increase of female participation in the Maltese workforce over 5 years. I am convinced that a key area for further progress must be to address the huge gaps in occupational activities, which often emanate from imbalances in the education and employment opportunities and the policy strategies of our countries. According to the most recent indicators from Eurostat, a significant contributor to the gender pay gap in all countries of the European Union is the fact that women are being pushed into entering relatively low-paid sectors. Europe is making considerable strides forward in terms of legislation and policy. However, we are not keeping up the same pace to achieve the much-needed mental and cultural leap to overcome prejudice, patriarchal oppressions, discrimination, and socially sanctioned abuses of privilege. Such discrimination does not only exist in the spheres of economic participation and employment. If women and girls do not feel safe, protected, and respected, then their place within our economies will never truly reflect their potential. For this reason, I am truly pleased that the European Union and the United Nations have come together in a powerful synergy to focus on the issue of ending violence on women and girls. This is being done through the Spotlight Initiative. We cannot achieve the full participation of women in the economic life of our countries, while women and girls are still subject to unacceptable threats to their safety and well-being. 1 in 3 women in the European Union has been a victim of physical and/or sexual violence since the age of 15. 1 in 20 women in Europe have been the victims of rape. 55% of women have been victims of sexual harassment. 1 in 3 women has experienced abuse by a partner. This data from the European Commission is evidence of the need to support projects such as the Spotlight Initiative and the recently established European Observatory on Femicide, which is a collaboration between 8 countries, including Israel, and which is located at the University of Malta. These projects represent an essential investment in our aspirations to end all forms of violence and discrimination against women. I would like to encourage our European authorities to extend their spotlight to this vital work and support the expansion of the European Observatory on Femicide across the European Union. In this context, it is of utmost importance that the Council of the European Union continues to push for the implementation of the Istanbul Convention in order to more effectively address our concerns. On concluding, let us continue working together to build a world in which the dignity and identity of every woman and girl is not only safeguarded, but most importantly, celebrated. We all have the responsibility to act now. Let us work together to continue empowering women and girls to effectively address the underlying challenges which are causing a widening gender pay gap and to end all forms of gender-based violence. Equality is not about destroying or distorting the differences between women and men. Equality is about embracing diverse people of all genders and creating a context in which each and every person can pursue their legitimate aspirations and be respected in the fullness of their human dignity. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. We will reflect on your strong statement about, quote, knowing that a thing is right and doing the right thing. Please welcome now Roch-Marc Christian Kaboré, President of Burkina Faso, to share some thoughts.
Majesté,
Majesties, Heads of State, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to express to the President of the European Commission, I'd like to express my thanks for the great honor that he has paid us in taking the floor on this second day of the European Development Days to talk about looking at the issue of women and girls at the very heart of development, to try and promote the autonomy of women and girls and to promote investment in them. These development days enable us to share best practice on questions of human development and sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, we are focused on achieving the SDGs established by the UN for the Agenda 2030. And the African Union, within the African Union, Burkina Faso has already made efforts to try and bring down the inequalities between men and women. My country, which has 52% of women, has actually already corrected a number of international legal instruments to promote human rights, promote women's rights and children's rights at all levels. That is how we have been able to develop a voluntarist national policy which focuses on the objective of making sure that we have a society which no longer has any form of inequality or injustice, and which ensures that all citizens, male or female, have got the requirement for a safe development in terms of economics and culture. And we have involved civil society and the religious organizations as well, and we are working with these various actors to create a strong infrastructure to make sure that women have got the role that they deserve in our society. Indeed, there are many challenges yet to overcome, but the measures that have been undertaken at national level have enabled us to make significant progress in the area of education, health, and access to land, and to ensure that women can also participate in political life. Today, I think we can say that there are nearly as many women, young girls, as boys in primary schools. As many girls as boys. There are 86.4% of our girls are in education, but we do see great distinct differences at secondary level, and yet education is a key element if we want young women, young girls to be able to be involved in the economic development of our country. In fact, it is the only way in which we can fight against early marriages. It's the only way that we're able to actually fight against all of these practices which have burdened our society to date. In 2016, we took the decision to make sure that we were able to provide help to pregnant women and children under 5, and make sure that we're also able to provide measures to detect breast cancer and uterus cancer to ensure that we improved women's health and prevent fatalities. We have also actually been working on ensuring that women had access to land rights, and some 34% of land in 2016, 34% of the land made available by the state was given to women. In 2009, we had asked for 30% of women on our electoral lists, but we have noted that, in fact, we were not able to meet those results because not many women actually had put themselves forward to be part of these decision-making centres. And why is that? Because decisions were taken by the political parties before the electoral sessions to improve the number of women in the government. As far as economics are concerned, women and we've put into place mechanisms for women and young girls to enable them to have access to vocational training and to enable them to be involved in the economy. We've created a number of jobs for women and young girls to help them to develop. I'd like to highlight the efforts that the UN has been undertaking and underscoring for the greater access of women to the economy, and I think that our country is playing an important role in this whole process. Ladies and gentlemen, I also have got to talk to you about the issue of safety and security. We've seen terrorist attacks, which are a factor which leads to the degradation of the situation of women in the Sahel region, and which has paid to which they have paid a heavy cost. That's why we want to actually develop develop new efforts for development and security. In Burkina Faso, we have actually implemented a new policy on the fight against poverty in the Sahel area, and trying to create a socio-economic infrastructure which will promote the well-being of the population. This is a program for 2017 to 2020. It would be 680,000 euros, and million euros. This is the overall budget has been supported by the European Commission, and we'd like to thank them because they have provided 50 million euros towards our programme in a convention that we signed yesterday when we arrived in Brussels. So I would like to thank the European Commission for that. I would also like to say that we are very much committed to pursuing these values of peace, justice, and social justice. And we are trying to focus today on the rights of women and children, young girls, and that is part and parcel of sustainable development as partners in our development effort. So I do wish you every success in your deliberations today. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you so much for sharing some of the measures Burkina Faso has taken toward gender equality and also for highlighting the safety and security for women in the Sahel region. Ladies and gentlemen, please now welcome George Weah, the President of Liberia.
Your Majesty, Mr. Antonio Tajani, President of the European Union, Mr. Donald Stokes, President of the European Council, Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be here today on the occasions of the 12th Annual European Development Days to celebrate the great strides that the European Union has made in empowering women and your advocacy of gender equality around the world. I applaud the European Union for dedicating this year's European Development Days to the development of women within the context of the Sustainable Development Agenda 2030 under the theme, Women and Girls at the Forefront of Sustainable Development, Protect, Empower, and Invest. In today's evolving world, there has been major progress made in some countries with gender equality. However, in other countries, the rights of women and girls remain a major challenge, especially in developing countries. How can we develop without women and girls are not in development? How can we achieve meaningful economic growth if women and girls are excluded from participating in economic activities? How can we maintain peace and stability if our women and girls are being raped and abused? Ladies and gentlemen, the implications of gender economic disparity and abuse cannot be overstated. Desperate global effort close the gender economic gaps and eradicate gender-based violence. It still remains a persistent problem, especially among young people. In my own country, Liberia, issues of gender equality and sexual abuse, violence continue to be a major challenge. As President of Liberia, it is my responsibility to lead the efforts to address and rectify this glaring disparity in our socio-economic fabric. But I would like to inform you that beyond that, my commitment and dedication to this cause is also on a very personal level and comes from a deep and long-standing appreciation and respect for the strength and the value of women and girls in our society, which I acquired during my childhood upbringing. I was raised by my grandmother in one of the poorest ghettos in Liberia, and in very difficult circumstances. Yet, she was always strong in her conviction that she would not be deterred or defeated by these adversities. She never wavered in her belief that she could make something out of little, and she never gave up hope that she could win in spite of the odds. I am a product of her belief and teaching, many of which remain with me, even up to this day. I will never forget the lesson that she taught me by her own example about the strength and value of an empowered woman. As Liberia moves forward, women and girls' empowerment will continue to be a priority. Although we continue to enjoy 18 years of uninterrupted peace since the end of our civil crisis in 2003, the severe impact of the crisis on women and girls has left them particularly vulnerable, and as a result, they are finding recovery more difficult than the rest of the population. The return to stability and democratic governance has provided the space to roll out national programs to address these challenges, bearing in mind that Liberia can never fulfill its development objective if the development of women is ignored. As women constitute more than 50% of the population, as the national leader, I am convinced that one of the most effective strategies to correct this situation is to take affirmative actions in the interest of women and girls, such that they will enjoy greater participation in national leadership. This is why, for example, when the National Elections Commission requires each political party to put up a minimum of 30% of women for parliamentary elections, I raised the bar for my party to 50%. And I'm proud to inform you that of those women who had the courage to run were all successful. In the same vein, when I was given a short list of possible candidates to be my running mate during the recent presidential elections, I chose a woman, and she is now the first female vice president in Liberia history. I've also appointed woman to be the first female Deputy Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of Liberia. And there is also a female who served as Deputy Inspector General of the National Police. Similarly, I have appointed many women to ministerial positions and to board of state-owned enterprises, and intend to appoint many more. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have also come to realize that discriminations and violence against women in our society, the marginalizations of women, and the almost cautious acceptance of it is indeed embedded in our culture. Moreover, these cultural accepted behavior were exacerbated by our protracted civil conflicts, during which gender-based violence was perpetrated on women by the male-dominant warring factions. Oftentimes, rapes and plunder become accepted as both a weapon and a butte of war. It will require persistent efforts to change the mindset of people who for generations have considered this to be a norm. and we will not relent in our effort to do so. But what is most surprising is to discover that discrimination against women is also embedded in our laws, including our Constitution, and runs contrary to all our efforts to eliminate the phenomenon. Laws on marriage, divorce, property rights, child custody, and land ownership all contain powerful clauses that marginalize our women in favor of men. It is my intention to conduct a comprehensive review of our entire body laws to highlight and eliminate those clauses that obviously discriminate against the women of Liberia. And in this regard, we are requesting assistance support from the European Union to carry out this extensive reviews, after which we will engage the national legislature for amendments and revisions where necessary. These measures are intended to complement existing actions and policy that have been taken by the government of Liberia to curtail gender violence and discrimination against women. This includes, among others, the Gender and Sexual-Based Violence Act, the establishment of a Women and Children Protections sections within the Liberian National Police and Rural Women Structure. There is also an executive order on domestic violence, 2018, which places a temporary ban on all forms of domestic violence, including female genital mutilations, for a period of years. It is our intention to renew this executive order as it expires, and subsequently submit a bill to the national legislature to finally address this issue. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, these measures put in place have helped in addressing the situation. However, there is a lack of infrastructure to speedily try and convict offenders. And even when they are convicted, the prisons are overcrowded and are inadequate to keep offenders behind bars for the duration of their sentence. We therefore ask the European Union and other international partners to work with the Liberian justice system in finding solutions to some of these problems. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, besides gender inequality, which negatively impacts our social progress and development, we are also faced with a new security threat in which terrorism, since our troops become involved in the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Mali, we run the risk of retaliatory strikes from supporters and sympathizers of the forces that threaten peace in Mali. Our involvement was solely based on reciprocations of the many sacrifices that other United Nations forces have made to bring peace to Liberia. In the face of this new risk, we are asking the European Union, in conjunction with the United Nations, to work with our security sector to ensure the safety of our citizens and residents within our borders. As I close, let me reaffirm and assure you of the commitment and determination of the government of Liberia to continue to remain aware of the vulnerable position of women and girls in our society, and to do all that is necessary to protect, invest, and empower them so that they may make the fullest contribution and realize the full benefit of our pro-poor development agenda. I now wish to thank the organizing committee, and the entire European leadership for this opportunity to share my view at this event. To all my Muslim brothers and sisters, I say to you, Ramadan Kareem, may God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. President, for highlighting gender-based violence and sexual abuse and articulating your commitment to fight this. Also, thank you for sharing your very personal story about your grandma and how she shaped your views on women and girls today and has led to some of the profound actions that you've taken. I'd like to invite now Erna Solberg, the Prime Minister of Norway, to share some thoughts.
Your Majesties, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased that this year's European Development Days are devoted to gender equality and women's empowerment. Gender equality is crucial for every country and every society in the world. Moreover, it is a precondition for sustainable development. And there is a place reserved on the garbage heap of history for discrimination of women and girls. It belongs there along with racism and slavery. For governments, gender equality is not a policy option. It's a human right. For sustainable development, gender equality is the smartest tool available. And who doesn't want to be on the right side, on the smart side of history? Women's full and equal participation in all aspects of life benefits society as a whole. It drives economic growth and sustainable development. Failure to promote women's participation in paid work is wasting half of humanity's skills and capacity. And no country can justify it or afford it. However, we still live in a world where women find it difficult to enter the labor market, the business sector, and politics. A world where women have less control of the resources than men do, where women have greater workloads in families than men do. We must get rid of all the factors that restrict women's participation in the economic sphere. This includes restrictions on women's property rights and access to finance. And it's time to move from rhetorics to concrete policies. Quality education for all girls and boys is crucial if women are to hold political and economic power on an equal footing with men. That's why my government has made girls' education a top priority in our development cooperation. But there are other challenges. A normative battle is being waged in the area of women's reproductive rights. This agenda has also come under threat when it comes to funding. To help fill this gap, Norway is increasing its support for health aspects of women's reproductive rights by 700 million Norwegian kroner between now and 2020. Norway has moved rapidly from poverty to prosperity. Gender equality has been an essential part of this process. Among the most important factors in Norway's economic development are affordable childcare, generous parental leave schemes. These measures have made it possible for both mothers and fathers to work. Of course, these schemes are costly, but they are also among the most profitable investments available for society as a whole. And women has changed politics in Norway. What was once considered women issues are now part of mainstream political agenda. And today, male politicians are promoting gender equality in the sectors where they are engaged. And if we want equality between women and men in the family and work life, we must also strengthen the role of fathers. So male ministers in my government make use of their right to parental leave when they become fathers. And I expect nothing less of them. They should not show up for office. We are happy to share our experience in this field with other interested countries. We have therefore launched a new gender equality for development program called LIKE, which aim to do just that. But Norway is not only a glorifying story about equal rights for women. As all other countries, by the SDGs, Norway is a developing country because we do not fill all the parts of equal rights for women. We still see violence against women. We still see a lack of following up by our police and investigation. We still see that in minority groups, women are do not get access to the rights they have by law in our society. And there is a link between a visit I made 6 years ago to Liberia. I was participating and listening in on a group of men sponsored by a Norwegian voluntary organization discussing why we should not rape. There's a link between that and the work we do to young growing up boys to say no is a no. No is not maybe. And short skirts and long legs is not an excuse or an invitation. It's in fact important to work against violence everywhere. And men must be part of that solution. They must speak up against all forms of violence against women everywhere. And maybe the most difficult area of this is in conflict and conflict areas. That's why it's so important that we follow up on the UN Security Council's resolution when it comes to women's participation in peace and security matters. But there are many positive trends in the world. We see that girls across the world are speaking up against outdated gender roles and that hold them back. There is growing awareness that all societies need to employ the best heads and hands in their developing process, regardless of gender. So in conclusion, gender equality is the way forward. And again, this is not an option. It is grounded in the human rights and in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which 193 heads of governments and states have underwritten. So there can be no excuse for not achieving gender equality by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Prime Minister, for being so committed to girls' education and women's reproductive rights and moving Norway in a strong direction toward gender equality. And thank you for forcing men to take paternity leave. I'd like to invite Amina Mohammed, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, to come and share her perspective to all of us.
Okay, I'm breaking a little bit with protocol, but that's in my character. Your Excellency, the President of the European Union Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, the President of the AU, our own, Paul Kagame, Majesty, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's really a big honor for me to join our partners here in the European Union and around the world. When I was told this year's European Development Day would focus on gender equality, I thought, now I really have to be here. But when I saw Jaya Dukare in the audience, I thought, I have to come up with her. She is our proud activist of ending child marriage and FGM. But more than that, she's an example of how we, in our generation, feel incredibly confident when we know that we must do the intergenerational shift to her. So what I wanted to say to you is, I want to be like you when I grow up. Thank you so much. Please. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we're now in the third year of work to advance the Sustainable Development Goals. And SDG Goal 5 calls on us to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. I often call it the docking station of the other 16 goals. Without equality and empowerment, we will simply perpetuate today's paradigm, trying to address all the world's challenges with only half of the world's assets. This is as unwise as it is unjust. And just last week, the World Bank detailed how women's equal participation in the labor force could unlock $160 trillion, almost 2% of global GDP, resources that could be reinvested in sustainable development. Yet a stark reality prevails. More women than men live in extreme poverty. The pay gap stands at an inexcusable 23%. Gender roles have been slow to change, and women are not fully included in decision-making, from governments to boardrooms and to peace processes. And even when we are, as we heard from President Paul Kagame, our voices are often put down for want of what does that mean? She's shouting, not making her point made. And violence against women remains, unfortunately, a global pandemic. Attacks and discrimination against women are deeply embedded in social norms, attitudes, and practices. Especially tragic when actually they are our mothers, they are our daughters, they are our sisters, they are our wives, and in some cases, they are our grandchildren. Addressing these mindsets will require significant investment of time, resources, and political will. And let me say how pleased I was when we heard President Paul Kagame, as the President of the African Union, become, I would say, our first feminist in the African Union, but followed by, pleasantly, the President of Burkina Faso, the President of Liberia, and I can see the President of Niger sitting there, all, in fact, the #1 feminists in their countries, as we have the Secretary General, the #1 feminist in the United Nations. So things are changing. This is why the European Union and the United Nations have marked on a multi-year partnership, the Spotlight Initiative. Spotlight aims to support governments to build on the leadership of civil society and focus on the most urgent needs, such as preventing violence, providing services for survivors, and trying to reform the criminal justice system. While the country programs are currently being developed, they build on and scale up existing efforts. In Malawi, for instance, the initiative will support dialogue on discriminatory social norms through community theatre and engaging, very importantly, our traditional leaders and educators. In Mexico, it will train healthcare workers on identifying early signs of abuse to prevent violence through school-based campaigns which challenge the idea that manhood is premised on violence. In some countries, Spotlight will focus on the most extreme form of violence, femicide. Worldwide, almost 1 in 2 murdered women are killed by a partner or ex-partner. Often in the wake of these murders, we find that women have indeed reported to the police or sought medical care, but service providers did not have adequate information or the means to identify the risk. Some of this violence takes place in the context of the border insecurity that women face, particularly where they are advocating for women's rights. Last year in Argentina, the body of student and activist Micaela Garcia of the Ni Una Menos, Not One Less movement was found a week after she disappeared. Through the Spotlight Initiative, we can work to make such violence against activists like her and so many others a thing of the past. I commend the European Union for its generous funding and for the leadership of Commissioner Mimisa. His vision, his passion, and his commitment to the cause of women is quite incredible. Thank you, Commissioner Mimisa. The United Nations is strongly committed. Thank you. The United Nations is strongly committed to leading by example by empowering women within the organization itself. Today, for the first time in UN history, there is gender parity in our senior management and amongst our 129 resident coordinators around the world, our team leaders on the ground. We still have a long, long way to go, but we do have a plan and we do have the will to make that happen. Let me also stress that while we talk about women and girls, let us not forget the men and the boys. They are crucial partners in changing norms and empowering women. They are also beneficiaries, since gender equality brings the gains for all of our society. Let us also do more to invest in the capacities of young people in general. They are well placed to fight the biases and to correct the mistakes of older generations. Ladies and gentlemen, when we first began planning the Spotlight Initiative, we had no idea that a global movement would rise up to shake the pillars of patriarchy. By October of last year, over 1.7 million tweets, including the hashtag #MeToo, and 85 countries had at least 1,000 tweets on the subject. I too have stepped up and forward to say Me Too. Let us raise our voices and actions to say no to gender-based violence. As Martin Luther King said, it is not the voices of our enemies that matter as much as the silence of our friends. We hope that through the Spotlight Initiative, we can strengthen this movement and build a peaceful, equitable world with zero violence against women and girls. Finally, I too would like to add my voice in appreciation to the European Union Commission for recognizing Mama Sisulu and Madiba in their centenary. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Secretary General, for your commitment always to gender equality and for championing the way forward for women and girls. And thank you also for breaking with protocol by adding the title of feminist to African heads of state here. Thank you. And finally, I would like to invite Antonio Tajani, the President of the European Parliament, to say a few words.
Majesté, Majestad, Excellence, Monsieur le Commissaire.
Your Majesties, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to be here with you for this important meeting for international development and cooperation. Last year, I had the honor to sign on behalf of the European Parliament with Federica Mogherini and President Juncker, the new Consensus on Development. This is a founding document that gives a great importance to the themes of this year. Women and young girls employed in sustainable development. We were looking at the fundamental rights of women and young and children, optimizing resources, and all this is a lever that pushes economic growth and combats deregulation for climate change, and also it gives us a basis for a more equitable society. Real advances have been made over the last 20 years. I really welcome the commitment of the United Nations in favor of sustainable development. But these are not equal depending on the countries involved. And that is why we must double our efforts and never stop stressing the importance of these subjects, because poverty shows a female face. About 70% of the poor of the world are female. When there's a catastrophe, women are the first victims because of their involvement in agriculture or irregular types of economy. They really bear the brunt of climate change, of drought and of floods. I must say how the European Parliament is involved in this subject with the Commission that is dealing with gender equality and women's rights. The gender equality, is one of the main points of the actions of the European Parliament, whether it's outside of the Union or within the Union itself, and of an institution which I have the honor of presiding. Therefore, we really regret the last decision of the European Court of Justice of cancelling the action of the European Parliament against Janos's activities. Now, here we must always defend our activities within the European Union. As far as I'm concerned, nothing will make me drop the values of the Charter of the Fundamental Rights of the European Union. When facing all these challenges, such as gender equality, climate changes, migration, employment, we must maintain our ambitions. I'd like to take the opportunity for the presence of the European Commission to say that the European Parliament, when discussing the future budget, will be asking for more resources for Africa. Because what we have at the moment is not enough. We really have to call ourselves into question. We've got to be more ambitious. We've got to challenge ourselves and be bold. We can't just accept business as usual.
For Africa in our budget, we need to have a real Marshall Plan. We need more 40 billion euro for the next years. We need to invest in this continent. It's also our interest is not only the African interest, it's the European interest. If we want to reduce the illegal immigration, we need to do it. We need to invest more. We need a strong engagement, also through the economic diplomacy. We need to organize more mission for growth. We need to have more European entrepreneurs in Africa. We need to organize joint ventures. We need a strong engagement, European strong engagement against climate change, against terrorism, against Boko Haram, in favor of safety and security for the African people. This is our job. If we want to beat this disaster, the illegal immigration for Europe is very complicated to manage this situation. And we'll have more and more populistic party. For this, we need to work hard in Africa. We need to look at Africa not with our glasses, but with your glasses. We need to know much better. It's also our interest. Raw materials are in Africa, and we need more raw materials for our industry. We are an industrial industry for us is crucial. Real economy is crucial for our growth. For this, we have the same interest. Growth of Africa, the development of Africa, it's our interest. For many times, Europe worked hard with Russia, with China. Of course, it's important, but we need to do more with Africa, as we need to do more with Latin America. This is engagement of the European Parliament. On essaiera de mettre plus d'argent.
Okay, we will try to put more money into the next budget to try and strengthen the friendship between us and you, dear African friends. We really must invest more if we want to find better solutions. Thank you, and I'd like to thank the Commissioner.
Thank you, President Tajani, particularly for your perspective and insights and thoughts on Africa. I'd like to take a moment now to introduce a woman who is synonymous with being a champion for women and girls, someone who is inspirational globally, and to me personally. She speaks her mind, and she sings from her heart. Over the years, I've affectionately called her Angélique le Fantastique, which she most definitely is. Ladies and gentlemen, please offer a very warm welcome to my friend, the hugely talented Angélique Kidjo, who's going to get everyone moving.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored and pleased to have the time to come here. Mina, it's always my problem, the time. And this was a moment I couldn't miss, even though I have lots of things to do, but nothing is more important than the girls and women of Africa and the world. I'm here today with another champion of girls and women issue in Africa, Mr. Youssou, that's gonna come and sing for you later on. I'm here because of my family, because of my mom and my dad. Since I was a little girl, I've been told by my father that it's not because I'm a girl that I cannot become whoever I wanted to be. My father has always been a champion for girls and women. My mom, anything she decided to do, my father said, if it makes you happy, go ahead and do it. And he was really criticized by his own family, saying, who wear the pants? And my father always answered, it doesn't matter who wear the pants. As long as my partner of life helped me raise my children better and make me a better man, that's all I'm here for. And I think that the issue of women start home. We women, we raise boys and girls. It's about time. We start telling our little boys it's not okay to pick on your sister. That you have to protect and respect her rights and her space. To really put an end to gender inequality, we have to start raising the kids, boys, home like that. And I think that everybody understands what is going on. I'm not going to say anything that has been said before, but I will speak from my heart. My mom and dad have told me what is right, and what is wrong is wrong. And if you witness wrong and you don't do anything, then you have to question your own humanity. What makes us human beings? The most important thing that makes us human beings is because we have to believe that we are each other's keeper. That if what is good for you is not good for somebody else, you're not a human being anymore. We're here talking about investing. Okay, money is the beginning of the problem, the solutions. But where does the money go? How do we allocate money to the most vulnerable girl that I see as a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador and through my organization for teenagers? UNICEF does such a great work that I'm always happy to go on the field with them. But what I see, none of you have seen it, and none of you will ever see it. Because I tell you, if you are a human being and you see those girls kidnapped and raped to marriage, and the fact that years after they're talking to you, the body language is still the pain that goes through. And here we are in Brussels talking about girls' rights, gender inequality. We need to get to the level of the women and girls that we want to help. In that, there's no leaders. Because if you are a leader of a country and you don't see for yourself what I see, how can you really do something that is profoundly different? It's not only about business, it's about people. We can only do business when people do right, when people do good, and when the women of this world feel that their place is respected, their body is respected, their mind is respected, and everything about them is respected. My father always used to say, a man that loves you, that doesn't respect you, is not love, just walk away. Because if you open your mouth and you have an opinion, he doesn't, and he replied to that opinion with a fist, he's not a man, he's a coward. A man that beat a woman that stand and take that because she wants to protect her children, we have to find a safe space for that woman for her to be safe. There's not one leader in the world that can call themselves man when they don't do anything to help the girls and the women of their country. And I learned that home from the beginning. So here we are, and this is the moment where the European Union, that I want to take this opportunity to thank by bringing to the center gender inequality. It is impacting the economy of the world. I am the poster girl of this, and I've seen it. Investing in girls transform everything. So we're talking about economy and investment. Let's start doing it really. Let's walk the talk. I give so many speeches and nothing happens. And I'm tired of it because every minute we waste, every second we waste, a girl is in danger of death. The girl is in danger of rape. I'm not sugarcoating anything. I don't do politics. I'm not good at it. I'm just telling you the truth. Leaders around this world, stop talking and do things. When the money comes in, don't put it in your pocket. Just do it for the girls. Because your power will be recognized by what you have achieved. You will be remembered for what you have done. Just don't be just a speaker, empty of action. Action is what we need, we women of Africa, we women of this world. Our law have to protect us as much as it protected the little boys. No one is above the law, yet the society we live in, let us women struggle, fight for our body, our brain, and everything we want to do. Why should it be like that? What have we done wrong for men to think that they are the ones that have to call the shot and do whatever they want to do with our bodies? And I think that here today, I'm talking to women, men, young girls, young boys. We all have to come together and understand that the survival of our societies in Africa, in Europe, in Latin America, around the 5 continents on this planet, if we don't put our resources together, we don't put our brain together, and we don't work with the people on the local level in our country, we have to dig from the bottom up. Don't sit in an office and make a plan. Go to the women and ask them what they need. How can we help? How can we build from the ground up? How can we, every step of the way, can justify every euro, every dollar spent to end female genital mutilation, child marriage, and child abuse? As an artist, I only have my voice. And my voice, I use it for those girls that tell me how painful it is for them to live the life they live in. They can't be here to talk to you. I'm here to talk on their behalf. Please help us help them. Please let us transform our societies. And for us, in 10 years from now, we can sit and go and say, June 5th, 2018, we've made a decision, we've kept our word, and we have acted upon it. And the girl of this world can walk in every street, everywhere in the world, and said, I'm proud of being a girl, and because you've looked up to me, I'm going to look up to the society where I grew up. Thank you.
Thank you, Angélique. Walk the talk. We need to get to the level of women and girls themselves and understand what is really happening. Thank you so much for your thoughts. I'd now like to invite President Mamadou Issoufou of Niger to share some of his thoughts on women and girls. Niger is one of the 8 countries from Africa participating in the Spotlight Initiative. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majesté, Monsieur le Président de la Commission.
Majesty, President of the Commission, Heads of State. I would just like to say how pleased I am to be able to take the floor after this wonderful voice that we've just heard. And, President, I'd also like to thank you and express my gratitude from my government and my population of Niger, because you have shown us a great honor by inviting us and myself to participate in this 12th European Development Day event. The theme of today's Development Days is something that we support fully. It's aimed at looking at how women and young girls can fully participate in the economic, social and political development of our countries, and it's extremely pertinent to us. It's something which I share fully with that fits in with the goals of sustainable development which were established by the UN for the Agenda 2030. The participation of women, who represent half of the world population, is still something which is a problem. We're still below half of the participation, despite the fact that there has been great international commitment since the Beijing conference. I think that we have seen that there are difficulties in putting these decisions fully into force. So I would like to share with you a story about the situation in Nigeria and how we have tried to better involve the participation of women and girls in development and our hopes for the future in this area. In Nigeria, we have 50.3% of our population are female. So there's slightly more women than men. The challenge of gender equality, of independence, and their involvement in the process of sustainable development is something which is very much felt today in Nigeria. As far as access to education is concerned, as far as literacy is concerned, there are still gender inequalities in both areas. In 2015-2016, there was about 12 points difference between male and female in the level of education, of scholarization for girls and boys, in primary and at secondary level. In health and reproductive health, we've seen that women are being married very early, and we're seeing a large number of early pregnancies, child pregnancies, child marriages, and we're seeing the levels of fertility which are the highest in the world. The participation of women in the workforce as well is an area that we've been focusing on. We can see here very clearly that there is great inequality in the way in which responsibilities are given out, inequality in the way in which jobs are given out, and the way in which resources are managed. Employment level is about 40% for women and 90% for men. So 60% of our female population have no professional activity. They have no rights, and they're not being able to enrich in themselves, which leads to great problems of poverty for that part of the population. 3 out of 4 people living in poverty in Nigeria are female. As concerns female participation in the decision-making levels, here again we have great disparity at all levels of decision-making. The percentage of women who are at high levels in companies is much lower than men. So there are many more men executives than women. And we look at their participation in development, in economic development in the country, and we can see that this is a real concern for Nigeria. And of course, our government has become very aware of this and takes it on board when developing government public policy. Reforms have been implemented, and there are many in the pipeline. There are many different programs which are aiming at trying to bring about a positive change and to radically change the economic and social situation of women and girls, going from education through to health, and their role in the economy and their role also in decision-making bodies. These 4 sectors are those where we see a huge challenge for our country if we want to be able to achieve our aim, which is to see women participate in the development of our country. So implementing these policies and these programs has enabled us to participate in an improvement in the situation of women. As our main economic and social indicators have shown us for 2017, we can see that there has now been an important drop in the child mortality rate for those under 5. We've seen also an increased scholarization of young girls. We've seen a drop in the fertility rate as well. These indices had been very stable over 20 years, but we've seen a drop in the last couple of years thanks to the programs that we have implemented. So we see that even with these efforts, the level of fertility is still very high in our country. In 2011-2016, we undertook a program to try and focus on economic and social development, and we're going to be continuing this in 2017-2021. We will be focusing on education, and we're trying to double our objective to try and increase the level of population across education across the population, to try and reduce the disparities which exist in school dropouts between girls and boys, and we want to reinforce the quality of education across the board. Our plan actually looks in particular at how we can improve education opportunities for young girls, how we can ensure that they have access to vocational and technical training, how we make sure that we have alternatives for them, regulatory alternatives, and that we ensure that girls can be kept in education until the age of 16. In that way, they will be better prepared for the jobs in the modern economic sectors. So by keeping girls at school until 16 years of age, it would enable us also to bring an end to child marriages, which is, according to one of the recent studies by the World Bank, by getting rid of child marriage and getting rid of young pregnancies, a young person would actually have an advantage of 1.3. The country would actually see an increase in its GDP of 0.38%. Because of the high number of illiterate and non-educated girls, a program of literacy has been introduced as well in Nigeria, focusing particularly on women and girls to try and make up the lag that they're situated in. In health terms, our plan is also focusing on access to primary health care. Vaccinations, for example, for young newborns, are also looking at maternal and reproductive health. We're also trying to ensure that the demographic change which we're seeing because of the drop in birth rates and the drop in fertility is taken on board. So we need to improve our training, our education of women, of their husbands, and also heads of our communities and our societies, church leaders as well. Our attention is going to be increased in this area. We're going to ensure that husbands are included in one of the pilot programs that we have developed. We have a school for husbands in all of the villages in Nigeria, where we're trying to ensure that men understand the changing demography that we're dealing with. We also have a program from the European Commission which is aimed at providing access to drinking water for all, not just to improve the health of the population, but also to free women from the chore that they have in providing drinking water to their families. And by making sure that we have drinking water in the villages, but we're able to reduce the number of people who are dependent on wells for their drinking water. As far as rural electricity provision is concerned, there's also a program which is aimed at ensuring that medium-sized towns and villages can have access to electricity, so that they can be connected to existing networks through or have access to solar or thermal energy. The idea behind this is that we're going to be able to ensure that women no longer have these terrible domestic chores because of the multifunctional platforms that are being developed for production of flour and foodstuffs. This would actually improve the daily life for women in Nigeria. Through economic cooperation agreements, women are going to be freed of these domestic chores. They're going to be provided with high-level education and vocational education, and that will enable them to be able to participate in better-paid jobs within companies or in other activities that will be developed in the country. This specific program for promoting employment and for promoting female employment and focusing on the needs of women, and also the financial support program for the country, is going to enable us to move towards our goals. The state does encourage women to participate in the decision-making process in a proactive way by establishing quotas for the electoral process to make sure that women are actually nominated to positions of responsibility within the public service. Another aspect of the public policy, or government policy, which is a vector of hope for women and young girls, is in our fight against terrorism and extremism, because we believe that they, again, are the first victims. We are convinced that by implementing these different initiatives, we will be able to achieve closer to the SDGs number 5, which is aimed at equality of gender and focused on improving the lot of women and girls. The challenges are indeed large, but they're part of the Programme for Regeneration in Nigeria, where social justice and the fight against poverty are at the heart of our activities. This is also which is going to help us to have a virtuous public policy which will radically improve the position of our population, the Nigerian population, over the next couple of years. Our hope is that every citizen, male and female, will be able to participate in the economic and social development policies implemented by our government, and that they will be able to benefit in a fair and equal way. They'll be able to benefit from the fruits of the growth in our country. And so the support which we have been given from the European Union with their program to fight against violence, that is going to be an important encouragement to us in our efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's now my honor and great pleasure to introduce a man whose music has moved mountains, built bridges, and is soulful and special. We are all fans here of the great Youssou, so please give a very warm welcome to a true feminist.
Hello. Merci.
Mangi o bepu doomu Afrika ñu bokk xalaat bokk gis-gis bokk yéene sans frontière boole sunu am te liggéey waratuñu nangu kenn ñëw di ñu feewale bul jiite réew foog ne la fa nekk yow yaa ko moom njiit bu dëgër dala war a fekk nga bëgg sa réew te sàkku ndimbal na ca fekk loxol boroom wuy Afrika su jant bi fenkee waaw na la fekk jóg ak sa jumtukaay bëccëg bi gaaw na ñett du bëre te ñaara mën kenn waaw yoon wi sore na te metti na nañu ko waajal Botul no beklat lañu defoon maam ya sa xol dootul nekk te dootoo xalaat lu dul fayen toog su ma sañoon Africain benn frontière taxayoon yi ba ñépp gisee change your thinking work together keep on working Cheikh Anta Diop Kwame Nkrumah Stephen Biko Nelson Mandela all you people
Un keyboard, Mr. Ibou Cissé. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Thank you. I think everything's been said. There are words that say that behind all great men, there's a woman. Well, I say there's always a woman behind great men. A strong Africa. Maybe it is what we call equality, but it's maybe efficiency. When there's efficiency, women are always in the forefront. So I support efficiency and efficacy, and I'm certain at this point that women will be in the forefront. A strong Africa means a strong Europe. A bad Africa, Africa that's going badly, so would Europe. So I think we have to keep working hand in hand, listening to the new Africa that is embodied by the people here. I'd like to mention President Kagame, President Kabore, President Issoufou, President George Weah, and many others, Macky Sall, others who today embody this new Africa, which is not the Africa of the 60s. It's the Africa of 2018, of the new millennium. We have to listen to them. It's not the old Africa any longer. So thank you very much. Have a fruitful meeting, and I'm sure that at the end of this meeting, as Angélique said, fewer words, more action. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Youssou N'Dour, for a very moving rendition of both the history and the future potential of Africa.